I don't think there's ever been a more soul-soothing countdown melody ever. I love that. I love that music so much. Guys, welcome back into another amazing esports leadership series. It is September. It is time for another opportunity to celebrate esports with you guys. Presented by Verizon. I am Adam Savage. Thank you all so much for joining. It is great to have you here. For those who have not joined me on the series here before, my name is Adam. I am a host predominantly working in the esports scene. I've been here in the industry working for the last 6 or 7 years or so now, mainly as a live stage host, working on some amazing shows from the Blast Pro series all the way through to working on the likes of Fortnite for the ESL, on Halo Championships and all sorts. I actually had the chance this summer, just gone to host the Summoners War EU prelims, so a mobile esport as well, and also host the likes of TV shows like The First Hour and Jinx Esports TV and other things as well. And now an analyst on FNCS working with Fortnite as well. So an array of things that was all things esports, which is absolutely amazing to be able to do as well. We're very excited to be bringing you today's webinar curated by the Esports Awards team. We have speakers joining us, spanning all breadths of the esports industry joining us, who we introduce to you shortly, actually. I'm going to bring those guys in very shortly. But before we begin, I would like to invite the almighty Michael Ashford, the CEO of the Esports Awards, to kick off the proceedings.
Thank you, Adam. Brilliant to have you back with us today. Looking on point, hosting on point, all around on point. And thanks to everyone joining us at home. We're really excited to have you with us for the event. I'm very happy to welcome you back to another event in the Esports Leadership Series, one that's kindly presented to you by Verizon. So first of all, I would like to say a huge thank you to Verizon for sponsoring today's event, and to Mark Chang, Director of Gaming and Esports, for believing in us over the last couple of years and allowing us to do some pretty cool stuff in the industry with them. We are joined today by Tim Sipp, who manages esports and gaming partnerships at Verizon, who will be able to give us some really cool insights throughout the event. We're also joined by Mr. Mobile himself, Matt Rutledge, a member of the Esports Awards panel, who we'll hear from later. So a special welcome and thank you for joining us. Another big shout out goes to Kirsty Endfield of SwipeRight PR, who has supported the awards massively alongside some of the brands we're speaking with tonight. Without Kirsty and her team, we certainly wouldn't be able to get our message across, and she'll be able to talk a little bit around how brands in mobile can get their message across tonight. The event is catered to give a real insight into mobile esports. The speakers span the full breadth of the industry, so expect a well-rounded discussion with various topics. I'm sure there's going to be some invaluable information shared. I also want to be able to give my delight at the fact that Europeans and us over here in the UK can now also go back to the US of A, which means that we are full steam ahead for the Esports Awards 2021. Obviously, as always, we are paying attention very much to the ongoing global pandemic, but feel in a very good place to safeguard those that are attending and build an intimate yet secure event to bring everyone together and celebrate esports globally in our home at the Esports Stadium in Arlington, Texas. I also want to give a quick reminder that tonight we'll be hosting a networking session straight after the summit. The session will provide an opportunity to connect with other industry professionals in an informal setting with large-scale discussion as well as smaller breakout rooms. I myself, as always, will be there and hope to meet as many of you as possible. The link will be in the bio below, so after we finish up with tonight's event, do make sure to go over. And on that note, my duties for tonight are done. Thank you again for tuning in, and to all of our speakers for speaking on the summit. And without further ado, I am over the moon to hand back to the one, the only, Mr. Adam Savage to commence proceedings.
You massive, massive flirt. Honestly, it never ends. Thank you for being so kind, Mike. It's great to have you. Do you know, it's amazing that we were talking one of the summits previously this summer all about whether or not Texas was going to happen this year, the Esports Awards, whether from the UK particularly you go out to Texas and actually enjoy the Esports Awards. I'm so glad to see that that's going to happen now as well. And Mike was kind of thinking, hopefully it's going to happen, and it has, which is amazing to see. But thank you, Mike, as always, for welcoming everybody in, and to you guys who just joined us as well. You're in for a treat, of course, here at the Leadership Series. It's always amazing to have so many great keynote speakers joining us to give us so much insight into the esports field with their kind of their personal experiences and what they do on a day-to-day basis as well. We're going to meet those guys in just a second, but a few things before we do that. Tonight's theme is going to be a topical discussion focused on the world of mobile gaming and esports. Been waiting for this one for a long time. We tend to always talk about or touch on mobile gaming in some capacity in all the leadership series. Tonight, we're focusing on it. We're going to split this up into two 30-minute panel discussions. There'll be a short intermission in the middle of that as well. At any point, if you have any questions whatsoever, please do write in the comments. Really get those comments in, and I'll try and get to as many as possible. Really do share with us and try to directly interact with our keynote speakers. If you can keep the questions as well related to the topic we're talking about, that would be amazing. It keeps things going a lot more smoothly for me more than anybody else. So thank you in advance. We anticipate the webinar is going to last around an hour and 20 minutes or so. And then afterwards, as Mike alluded to as well, please do join us at around 9:20 BST. That's 4:20 PM ET or 1:20 PM PT for some breakout rooms for networking with the speakers and other industry professionals. This session is open to absolutely everybody. Anyone can join these sessions, and they prove really, really valuable, extremely valuable, in fact, making connections within the esports space. We definitely encourage you to join. They've been a massive benefit to a lot of people over the course of the last few months and the last year or so. So do make sure to get into those if you can do. You're all more than welcome. The link is going to be posted as well to get into those in the comments at the end of the webinar. On that note, as I said, we have two different panels. It's time to meet our very first panel. Some returning guests and some new ones as well. First up, we have the almighty Tim Sipp joining us, Strategic Partnerships and Sponsorships at Verizon. Tim, how are you, sir? How's things?
Doing well, Adam. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Tim, we haven't had a chance to chat before on the leadership series like this. So for all those who are brand new to you, what can you tell us about your role, what you do at Verizon and in the esports world?
Yeah, sure. So I lead our esports and gaming league and publisher relationships at Verizon. So basically that means that I'm developing our marketing strategy, our co-marketing programs with our partners, as well as working with our internal network and 5G tech teams in optimizing and enhancing our partners' mobile apps for the network. We're also doing a lot of work with our partners in kind of tapping into the increased bandwidth and decreased latency of 5G and how that's going to develop the future of the esports fan experience, both in venue, at home, and I guess also on the go. So as I'm sure you can imagine, very excited for the conversation tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, connectivity is everything as well, particularly the mobile games. So amazing to have you here, Tim. Thank you for joining us. And I can't wait to get stuck into things very shortly. We also this evening are joined in panel one by the almighty Khang Tai, Global Esports Lead at Razer. Khang, good to have you back here, my friend. It's always good to see you. What can you tell us about your role? For those who might have missed you on a previous panel, what can you tell us about your role in esports and what you do at Razer?
Yeah, thank you. I really helped to execute our vision for esports at Razer across different regions, NA, Europe, Southeast Asian, mainly deal in team and player sponsorships, tournaments, and marketing and content. So my plate is full, but I love my job and I'm very grateful for it. So glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And it's good to have a plate full as well. I'd rather that than not have anything to do. So it's good that you're busy so much. You're so busy. Thanks for being here as well, Khang. We'll get stuck in very shortly. Lastly, but no means least on this first panel, we're joined by the wonderful Kirsty Endfield. We heard that Mike alluding to this wonderful lady in his earlier speech, founder and director at SwipeRight PR. Kirsty, good to have you back here. What can you tell us about your role at SwipeRight PR?
So firstly, I just want to say thank you to Mike. That's the warmest welcome I've ever had onto a panel. So that's just delightful. But yeah, so a bit on SwipeRight. We are a communications agency dedicated to esports and video games. We offer consumer and corporate communications for all corners of the industry. So whether that's teams, tournaments, through to PC, mobile games, core, casual games, you name it, we can help you. We also look after some of the biggest brands in the industry, including Red Bull, ByteDance, PUBG Mobile. And for me personally, I've been in gaming for over 12 years now, set up SwipeRight 6 years ago with a view to sort of specializing in esports and being the first agency to actually offer dedicated esports services. So that would be media training pro players, all the way through to sort of, how to handle that kind of press office function for tournaments, which was so sorely needed before we started.
Yeah, I was actually taking a look at SwipeRight, your website, prior to this, and
God, it's very old.
Kirsty, you basically worked with everyone there ever was in esports. There's a lot of different areas of the esports world as well, which is amazing. So it's perfect to have you on board for our panel as well. So this is our illustrious panel number one. For you guys watching at home now, do get your comments and your questions in for us. We have some kind of set questions we'll kick off with. I'm sure things will kind of like flow organically as well. But if there's anything you can add as well, please do so. We'll try and read out as many as possible. So I'm going to kick off, guys. I'm going to jump straight in to mobile gaming. One of the first questions, I'll come to you first, Tim, that's been recommended we ask, is kind of getting into the nitty gritty about mobile esports and from a regional point of view as well. The question is, when will mobile esports take over in NA and EU to the same degree as LATAM and C in those regions? Can you see it happening? And how will it happen, as well as the big question, Tim? What do you think?
Yes, so I think that it can happen. I think that there's really just going to have to be a fundamental cultural shift in how we engage with our phones from an NA and EU standpoint. I think that if you look historically, we're more interested in the larger format. I feel like I'd assume that most of us have a TV. I feel like I could see one in the background there, Adam. I feel like if you're at home playing a game, you're going to be playing on a larger screen, whether it's PC or console on TV. But I feel like as phones and networks are becoming more sophisticated, we're getting closer to parity between the mobile and the at-home experience. So I do feel like as networks get better, as devices get more sophisticated, and we get closer to parity, that's how we eventually make the shift, because ultimately people are going to want to engage where they have the best experience, and that's both players and also fans. So think like better graphics, more engaging, more exciting gameplay, and to do that you need the more sophisticated devices and the better connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I guess NA and EU as well. I'll come to you, Khang. Yeah, NA and EU, there's such an array of different systems, PCs, consoles being used regularly that mobiles might not be used as frequently, perhaps. But can you see the same kind of, Tim obviously feels it's going to be a thing that we are going to see it kind of gradually kind of come to be more and more in these regions. Can you see the same thing happening as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just a matter of time. But I kind of want to step back a little bit and talk about, what is going to, the things that'll get us over the hump, I guess you could say. And that is being player first, growing a community, having the publishers, OEMs, network providers all involved in this. It's a real, dance that we're all trying to do that to help grow this whole industry. And I think everyone plays that role, and it's so critical for everyone's success, because you can't just have, the networks like Verizon, building out 5G and the next generation of connectivity, but not have the games to really support that or fully take advantage of that. And the publishers, they really need to support their community as well. You have Riot, Tencent, Garena, Moonton, all putting out some wonderful games that are going to be great for competition. But it's getting the communication out there to invite more people to play and making it more accessible for people. And like I said, if there's no community, then it's not going to happen at all. So doing that first, and what Razer's doing is really trying to build that community around mobile esports. So that's why we sponsor teams like Tribe Gaming. We're looking at other teams as well, and you can see all the teams that have mobile esports teams like Nova, XSET, Fluxo, Loud, TSM. Big names. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kirsty, obviously, when you at SwipeRight as well, you're working a lot of campaigns as well with players, orgs, and different brands and such. The community and the social aspect, I guess, is a hugely big, plays a huge role, as Khang alluded to there as well. Have you guys tried to integrate that a lot in your campaigns as well?
Yeah, we've had to. I mean, traditional PR for mobile gaming is notoriously difficult. I mean, mobile gaming in general is difficult. You talk about mobile esports, it's even harder to kind of get in with press. And that's purely because they're their audience they're not in tune with what's happening in mobile gaming in general. So for them, it's about clicks, and what gets them clicks will be anything to do with like League or anything that's sort of, you know, those kind of, I suppose, typical esports, those more mainstream esports even. But in terms of sort of like how brands get involved, how sort of the scene's being developed, it has to be formed around your community. So everything that we do, even when it comes to sort of the work we do with PUBG Mobile, it's like, how are we sort of working with our teams? How are we creating heroes and stories around them? Because that's the most interesting part. It's not really about just an update or anything. It's more to do with like, what is, you know, how do we kind of create that kind of next level, that sort of, I suppose, the players that kind of help sustain that ecosystem. But going to that original question around whether mobile esports will take over, I'm quite dubious about that when it comes to sort of how that scene looks in North America and EU. I think mobile gaming, great, very young audience, so much access to devices. But esports it's a much more sort of niche part of mobile gaming. And that makes it a little bit harder for people just to sort of migrate over. And I don't necessarily think there is that sort of interchange between the different PC, console and mobile gaming users either. I think that's actually that's going to be quite a different cultural shift. And not to mention the accessibility of I suppose, like PCs versus mobile in sort of Asian markets as well. Like it's really hard for a lot of other regions to actually build a really solid PC, right? Whereas over here, it's just a lot more achievable, which is why the PC market dominates.
Yeah, I kind of take it for granted as well. Kind of, you naturally imagine that everyone has access to a lot of different things, like, you know, be it consoles or PCs, as you mentioned. But because everyone tends to have a mobile in some capacity these days, it's just the go-to. You have it in your hand anyway. Why not use it for gaming too? It makes perfect sense.
And sorry, just jump in real quick.
Yeah, of course.
I want to comment on that. I think there's there's truth to what Kirsty said, and I think one way that there's sort of that you can bridge that gap is through cloud gaming, and you know, with mobile and you know, products like the Kishi that we have, it makes cloud gaming a lot more accessible for people, and you need to play like AAA titles on your phone that you weren't able to do before. So that's just like the one step in the right direction. And you have like you know, Microsoft getting involved, Google getting involved, like really big, the biggest companies in the world, like believing in this. I think it's helpful for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's cloud gaming. It's growing exponentially all the time, isn't it? So, Tim, already questions are coming in for you guys as well, which is fantastic. Thank you guys in the comments, which is brilliant. I'll try and get to all of them as I can, as much as I can do. We have Servitude, one of our on YouTube, has come in with a question for you, Tim, saying, do you think that if infrastructure 5G improves to exceed that of wired, that game streaming will overcome the hardware challenges of handheld devices?
That's first off a really good question.
Thank you, Servitude. Thank you.
I do think that it has potential to. I think this kind of goes back to what Khang was talking about too, in terms of building the right games. I think if you look at what Riot's done recently with Wild Rift, they didn't just try to do a direct port of League. They're actually looking at like, how do I create this, modify the game, create something that's actually for the mobile format. So I think that the only way that would work would be if we have the connectivity, obviously, but then the games are custom built mobile first in essence. I think another important thing too is there needs to be a change in the mindset that it's not mobile esports versus esports. It's just all esports. And this happens to be on a mobile title, because I feel like as we keep making the delineation between mobile and I guess traditional esports, it almost diminishes the role of mobile, and it's seen as almost like the little brother to esports.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, Kirsty, we were talking earlier on about obviously, you know, campaigns and such, and community and how important that is when it comes to the actual games themselves as well. Do you think that's you know, it's a good point that, you know, if you can play PUBG, for instance, on a PC or whatnot, then mobile wouldn't be as appealing? Is that a problem, or is it a case of that the games that are made specifically for mobile are the ones that kind of are celebrated more in the press? Is that a thing that you tend to see at all?
That is a good question. To be honest, it really just depends on the IP, and obviously, you know, PUBG Mobile it just completely skyrocketed after the PC version. So, and then you'll see the same for Wild Rift, right? Because obviously it's a franchise that everyone recognizes. So in a way, having something that's not a port at all, because it can't ever be a port, it has to be a dedicated core game for that audience. But having something that is recognizable definitely helps. And then I suppose when it comes to kind of actually just touching on what sort of Tim mentioned around the positioning of like that 2 tiers of like esports and mobile esports, it's really interesting because that is something that right now, from a comms point of view, we can't get away from. We have to differentiate it. We have to use the term mobile esport because that is sort of generally what people are used to. From a mainstream point of view, there is a bit more of an opportunity. We don't actually necessarily need to say the word mobile. We could just say it's an esport, but for some reason, people naturally just go back to it anyway. So there's still a huge education piece, and it's still a technicality that we can try and get away from. But right now, I don't necessarily feel like people are ready for that step.
Yeah. I mean, going to the original kind of question, I guess, about the kind of the different regions and will NA and EU ever get to the same degree? What is it you think in those particular regions, Khang, that is so appealing, particularly like to Asia, for instance, where I know that PUBG Mobile we've mentioned and other games on mobile are so the go-to. I mean, the player base is absolutely monstrous. It's enormous. Is it a case of having the apparatus, or is there an appeal on that social level we talked about? What do you think is the kind of the more kind of the biggest reason why it has become so huge so quickly in those territories?
I think Kirsty mentioned it in her previous answers. Like, there's accessibility. I mean, yes, if you look at certain places like Korea or China, I mean, yes, they have access to a lot of like high-end performing devices, like their different builds and computers, but everyone has a mobile device. Almost everyone has a mobile device. Penetration is crazy, and it's still growing, which is exciting. But there's a wide range of devices from high end all the way to like low ends that can still support mobile games and perform still very well. So I think it's just like a cultural thing, and what products are actually accessible to people, and I think that's why mobile has succeeded in those regions.
Yeah. I think I remember last year I was before COVID. This is just before COVID. I had the chance to almost work with PUBG Mobile on a championship series, but due to COVID, it couldn't happen. But there was a lot of talk about the whether or not with regards to different people in different regions, different players, the ping rates and whatnot, and the kind of connectivity, how that was an issue then. It feels like in the last year, Tim, we've made a lot of progress. In the way in which LAN obviously is ideal because everyone loves being in the same space and connecting together and playing together in this in that environment. But it feels like now that we've come such a long way that players almost feel comfortable now, despite being in different regions, that they can compete at a level and not needing to necessarily be in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, like you said, LAN, nothing will ever beat LAN. It's a direct connection, right?
Yeah.
But that is something that we've been looking at on our end in terms of now we do have more of a dispersed professional esports community, people actually competing at the highest level, and almost how do we give a dedicated pipe into the servers for those competitors to create a better experience. I think that it's been great so far, but we think that we can do more in terms of the fidelity and quality of graphics. And also just minimizing any lag, because we all know you lag, you lose. So we obviously want to try to avoid that.
At all costs, yeah. But it's it's incredible. Like it just feels like that at first that was a really big thing, and it seems to have kind of filtered out now towards 2020, end of 2021, and players feel more comfortable, it seems. Another big talking point that we had originally was about infrastructure and what is needed in order to better serve mobile titles and esports. Kirsty, I'll come to you. Infrastructure-wise, what do you think is needed to better provide for mobile titles? Do you think that, from your point of view, is there anything that would be a huge benefit to the players of that community?
So I don't necessarily think that what we need from a mobile esports point of view needs to necessarily be different from an esports point of view. I think, and I'm going to use PUBG Mobile as an example because that's what I'm closest to. and James will probably crucify me in his next panel and say I've gotten it all wrong. But it's complimentary, so it's okay, James. For me, PUBG Mobile offers like the most robust esports ecosystem, especially for mobile, but actually in general, because it's very much global. It has a very clear path to pro structure, a significant prize pool. And I know, it can be a little bit cliche to talk about prize pool, but it's so important because you can't dedicate your life, your career to something that actually isn't going to earn you any money. But it's also super inclusive because it touches on so many different markets, so many different regions. So for me, it's that level of accessibility, which I think all esports need. And then the actual sort of that kind of career path, really, because that's the only way that you're going to actually create a sustainable ecosystem in general. So I don't necessarily think it needs to apply to mobile. And in a way, I feel like mobile is kind of best placed because of the level of accessibility of devices. So, I think what's actually currently happening is really good.
Yeah, Khang, the same question to you, infrastructure-wise. Like, do you think there's anything that could be done to do you agree with Kirsty's point? Do you think that can mobile titles get better if there is a way, or can it grow even more if there's other things in place to help it along?
Well, I think Kirsty really hit it on the head there. I think it's publisher support, creating an environment that's really inclusive for more people to join and compete. Having a prize pool is really important. But if we're talking about the different pillars of the industry, it's like, how can more non-endemic brands enter the space and help fund the growth of the community and this industry? I think all of us are doing a really good job doing and playing our part. But yeah, I think one part is just getting more brands involved and expanding and amplifying all of our efforts. From the hardware side of things, I can talk about what we're doing at Razer. It's manufacturing products and devices that can support mobile titles better. I think that's something that we've always been about, for gamers by gamers, and we're trying to give them the best tools that they can use to compete and play. So yeah, that'd be what I'd say.
And how about you, Tim? What are your thoughts?
I'm sure everyone's expecting me to talk about technology infrastructure, but no, I think it goes back to what Kirsty and Khang said earlier about the grassroots community. I think that from a publisher standpoint, it's building out those games that people want to engage with, that gets the player base, that gets the fan base. Because as Kirsty mentioned, the prize pool really does matter a lot. And from a sponsorship standpoint, how do you drive up the prize pool? How do you get sponsors? It's when you have all the fans. How do you get the fans? It's by creating an engaging game that people want to play and get very competitive at. So I think it really does all come back to creating that mobile first experience that people really, truly want to engage with. Not necessarily over PC, but with PC. So it's kind of, as we know, you don't have to be a fan of only one platform for esports. Be a fan of mobile and PC, but yeah, it's more of just kind of bringing them to parity.
Be a really interesting experiment, wouldn't it? Suddenly having a mobile esport with a prize pool that supersedes anything we've ever seen before, be it the international, wherever it might be, and seeing just how many players are suddenly driven to going, hey, that's kind of interesting. That prize pool is mega. I want to see, let's find out more about the mobile scene and whether it will make a difference or not. Let's have a look at some more questions that are coming through on the comments. Thank you guys for bringing those into us. This is great. TK Studio has got a question for us. On the PC platform, the highest tier esports come together in genres with uncapped skill ceilings like FPS and MOBAs. The question is, which genre, not a specific game, but which genre fills the tier 1 mobile esports spot best, I guess. So we've talked about PUBG a lot. Kirsty, do you think Battle Royale is the one that kind of fits genre-wise, like mobile esports best? Or do you think there's other ones that might, supersede that?
In general, the nice thing about, you've obviously got Fortnite within that as well. And so with both of those titles, there's no reason why that genre wouldn't be sort of classed as a tier 1, purely because you've obviously got a much younger audience with Fortnite. You've got a little bit more sort of this sounds harsh, but more sort of core experienced players on PUBG Mobile. Fortnite players are going to hate me for that. But but I suppose that's definitely an important genre. But I'd say any kind of shooter, because it's super accessible, people understand how to play it, really, that's just quite helpful. I think if you are more of a MOBA player, I think that that's a slightly harder level, purely because we're talking about general mobile gamers who that transfer from going sort of a little bit more casual to core is quite difficult. So for me, it's always about some kind of like FPS.
Interesting.
What do you think, Khang?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because when we're looking from a Western point of view, I think that might be true, where like MOBAs might be like that harder step to get into. It's a little bit more core. But you look at Southeast Asia, and you have games like Honor of Kings, Arena of Valor, Mobile Legends. That's dominant there, and the prize pools are amazing. So I think like when you look at different regions, they might have like a tier 1 title, that could be different from like something in something from EU or North America. Soon we're going to see, Apex Legends go mobile, Valorant go mobile, and those, I think you're right, like might succeed in North America. Those FPS styles, it's like for some reason our culture is really good with like shooters and stuff. So, but you have games like Pokemon Unite, that just came out, right? And there's a huge community around it now, and you see a lot of some of the content creators out there playing the game and having a great time. So it maybe just comes down to the kind of game and the community behind it.
Yeah, Pokemon Unite is a game that I need to get into because everyone keeps saying to me, "Oh, it's amazing." I've invested so much time in Pokemon Go. Now Unite's come along, and I'm like, I got to start again, but everyone's just going mad for it. So I don't know why I wouldn't do. I love that kind of stuff. And Apex Legends as well. One other thing that streaming regularly, people are talking about Apex Legends mobile, like it's going to fly off the shelves if that's a thing. But we've got loads more questions coming in. Let's go to we got a question here from Indie Game Business. With the global internet and as well as some countries adopting and some banning cryptocurrencies, how might that affect the transactions as well as prizes? That crypto is now, because crypto is sometimes offered as prizes, will that affect the everything there, Tim? How do you think that's going to have a massive impact or not?
It's interesting. So thinking from an NA and EU standpoint, I feel like most of the partners that we work with still are, the verdict is still out on the crypto point of view. I think that if we do get into crypto for the prize pool in NA, it might not be for a while. I think that we will still see traditional just cash prize for a while.
How about you, Kirsty? Do you think crypto NFTs, these kind of other prize options, do you think it's? I think cash will be the predominant, I guess, prize moving forward, unless you think otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite. It's a space that I'm very interested in, and I think I can really see the value in sort of in NFTs from a gaming point of view, because there's a lot that you can do to kind of immerse yourself within a game and kind of gain that kind of currency. It just kind of makes sense to have that kind of in-game currency. And it's almost kind of natural next step. But as a prize, I mean, if I was a player, I'd want the cash. I mean, and also I suppose prize value doesn't the prize money itself isn't sort of the be all and end all. I know a lot of teams and pro players don't necessarily base a lot of their salary on that, but it is still important. And I would, as an organization, also just want the cash. So
yeah, cash. Khang seems to be the preferred currency for now. Yeah, for now. Until the next leadership series, and things have completely changed.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well. I think as well, like we're seeing a lot of creators now as well who have really adopted mobile games as their preferred way of kind of making YouTube content or Twitter stream as well. Well, do you think we're going to continue to see kind of a real rise in, because there's a big balance there. A lot of players, obviously, we know as well, professional players are balancing their pro career alongside being creators as well. Do you think we're going to continue to see a lot more mobile, like esports creators, like competitive players, kind of grow that side of their world as well next? They can see there's a lot of value in it.
I absolutely 100% believe that is like the next step, or like we'll see more of that, because it's one thing to be a player and just kind of hide and just play and just try to be the best. That's one side of it. But I think a lot of young players are starting to realize that you got to build a brand, right? And content creation, is going to be a necessary step to growing, especially when you start playing for a team that is sponsored by a brand. The brand will start to expect content to be created from your team. So I think every player has to think that, yes, I need to be a player first, but a content creator second. I think that's just natural.
Yeah. Kirsty, with your work from the PR standpoint, I guess when you have players who have that repertoire of work they've done creation-wise online, it certainly adds and helps when it comes to working with them and on different campaigns as well.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. Firstly, with what Khang said, I think it's super important to have that kind of following. It's really important from in terms of brand partnerships. It's the first thing they're going to ask: what is your following? And they're going to look at your content. It's got to be good. It's got to be entertaining, but also, it's got to be not wholesome. That's probably the wrong word to use, but non-offensive. So yeah, I think from a brand point of view, from a comms point of view, like it is really important to strike that balance. It's also a really good way to just get scouted, because you're then promoting sort of your skills anyway. So the two kind of just go hand in hand.
And as you find it's working with individuals, like working, I guess you have a group, because a lot of teams are coming together now on mobile as well. Is it easier sometimes to promote a team because there's a bunch of them, you can kind of really reflect their personalities and certain things, or is it kind of sometimes easier working with just an individual on their own?
Well, it really depends. It depends on the team and it depends on the individual, because some players naturally shy away from doing these kind of interviews and they don't like press. So it makes our job quite challenging. But we have to, we are talking about quite, young people. So there's no point in pressuring them to go and conduct these interviews. And that's where it is helpful to work with a team. You have more choice. Working with an individual player makes things quite tricky, because, if they don't want to do something, then that's kind of it. But in general, the way we would go about selecting those players is, and it's what can they speak to? Are they comfortable speaking? Do they have an interesting following for sort of more mainstream press as well? So all of these things play a factor. It really depends on the organization. It depends on the individual.
Yeah,
that's a very fluffy PR answer. Sorry.
No, I'll take it. I'll take it. I was going to ask, there's a lot of comments actually in the chat as well, because we've only got a few minutes left here. It's gone so quickly. A lot of comments in the chat here talking about, obviously we've seen the last year, games like Warzone, for instance, and others there's been a lot of talk about hacking and such as well. And anti-cheat is very important. A lot of questions here, Tim, about anti-cheat in general and how important that is to maintain kind of like an even playing field on mobile esports as well. Is it something that can be tackled very easily and could have prevented to happen? Is it something that's very hard to iron out and make sure everything isn't kind of being tampered with behind the scenes somehow?
Yeah, so I think my short answer is that I'm sure that there are people much smarter than I who will be able to figure it out. But honestly, I mean, if we can figure it out for PC, we can figure it out for mobile too. It's just a matter of time until we actually create the technology that serves to do that. But I mean, obviously want to make sure that that's in place before going to mobile esports and making the significant shift, because it's the esports equivalent of steroids. Like no one wants to be on an uneven playing field. It's just not fair.
It's not fair as it can. I mean, I think that's what everyone wants. That's the great thing about, you mentioned it earlier on about the kind of if you're not playing LAN, you are playing from different regions all over the world. And despite the fact that a lot of the competitions now are regionalized into kind of, the North American competitions, and you've got EU and such as well. It seems that a lot of that kind of hullabaloo around whether or not, it's fair to a degree, that seems to have kind of been dissipated a bit now, and it feels like everyone is just as long as you're good at the game and the kind of mobile factor doesn't really play that bigger part anymore. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I still do think, though, in terms of anti-cheat, though, like people want to be on an even playing field in that regard. I mean, latency is one thing, but if there's something that's fundamentally different, yeah. I definitely agree. I was saying, but I think that latency is something that I think a lot of people as well. Like for me personally, we mentioned just a few of the kind of titles as well this evening, from Fortnite to PUBG and beyond. Like there are a lot. It seems that on a very regular basis now, Khang, that there are a lot more titles coming to the forefront that can team fight tactics. Pokemon Unite, as you mentioned. It seems that there are so many different genres and different ways that players can get involved with games now, regardless of age demographic. It feels like this is the best time there's ever been to get into mobile esports, because there are so many different opportunities out there.
Yeah, I think even before you mobile esports, you just think of the growth of mobile gaming. I mean, the whole industry has grown at an amazing rate in terms of revenue being driven. I think it was estimated that the industry is going to grow to $300 billion by 2030. That's just an insane number. Wow. And so, getting more people into mobile gaming first is going to be the key to growing mobile esports. And so when you have more developers building these wonderful games like Pokemon Unite, and the studios that have built their PC version of the games and now creating a mobile version of that game, that's just making mobile more accessible for everyone and more inclusive for everyone, because not everyone can have a 3080 graphics card in their system. I mean, I don't think anyone can find one right now, right? So
it's
what's
crazy. It's harder than a PS5. No one can find anything anymore.
Right. So the next best thing, if you can't get a 3080, is to play on mobile, right? And you can get an iPhone, or you can get the latest and greatest Pixel or something like that, and be able to play a really great game, have a great experience, and be competitive. And I think that's where mobile has really helped, is to stoke that fire of competition, that spirit in a lot of people. And that's why you see the industry growing at such an incredible rate.
Absolutely. And what a perfect note to end this wonderful first panel on as well. Stoking that fire, and the future is very bright for mobile gaming. Thank you all so much. It's gone so quickly, but you've all been absolutely brilliant as always. Thank you so much, Tim Sipp, Strategic Partnerships and Sponsorships at Verizon, Khang Tai, Global Esports Lead at Razer, and Kirsty Endfield, Founder and Director at SwipeRight PR. You guys hopefully will be around later on for the breakout rooms, and I'm sure if you guys have any questions that I didn't manage to read out that you want to ask our illustrious guests, please do stick around for that later on, because you go every opportunity. Everyone's welcome at our seminars afterwards as well. We'll be back with our next panel session in just a few minutes' time. Don't go too far at all, okay? It's really, really quick. I literally have a time for a sip of water and I'm back in the game again. It's very quick. Take a watch of this teaser video for the main show in Arlington, Texas, Saturday, 20th November. We're getting close. It's going to be an amazing night. You won't want to miss this one at all. It's going to be fantastic. If you want to attend the awards in person, drop the Esports Awards team an email or join the networking session after to meet them in person. That could be online as well. If you want to be there in some capacity, make sure to get in touch. Let's take a look at what's in store.
To ask you, are you ready?
Welcome back in. I managed to have 2 sips of water. Yes, winning. Welcome back into the Esports Leadership Series for September. My name is Adam Savage. We've had a great panel 1 and it's into panel 2. Today's panels are all about the world of mobile gaming in esports. And we have got a breakout rooms coming your way later on. But first things first, new guests to introduce you to, which is going to be very, very exciting indeed. One by one, I'll bring them in. First up, we have Leo Faria from Global Head of Esports Riot Games. Leo, my man, we've all been commenting how unbelievable your backdrop is. You live in like the most rock star lifestyle ever. Leo, thanks for being here, mate. How are you, first and foremost?
Thank you so much. Hey, thank you for having me. It's been great being busy. This is how I spend my time trapped at home, just playing music when I'm not playing video games. That's how I spend my time. But yeah, busy year, ramping up Wild Rift Esports. But doing great overall. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. You're living the dream for all of us here, Leo. Playing music, playing games, like the ultimate.
I know.
Man, what can you tell us about your role specifically as Global Head of Esports at Riot? Like, what would you do on a day-to-day basis?
Right. So I lead Wild Rift Esports, and that means I touch pretty much on every piece of the business. I think my main responsibilities is setting a vision and a direction for sport. I think if there's one thing we learned with League of Legends over the years with LoL sports is that there's no formula, right? Each game is unique. Each audience is unique. We could take a bunch of different directions with Wild Rift Esports. And yeah, my job is setting the direction for the team. And then we have, amazing producers, creative directors, event producers that make things happen. In my life, when we're executing, is just making their lives easier, giving them resources, guidance, direction to produce shows, competitions around the world.
Superb. Love it. Well, thanks, Leo. It's so good to have you here. I can't wait to kind of catch up properly. We've got a good half an hour of chit chat to have. It's going to be great. Thank you, Leo. For now, I'll bring in the next two, of course, the next two guests as well. Next up, we have James Yang, Director of Global Esports Center, Tencent Games. James, it is good to see you again, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, great. And here I'm located in Netherlands now. Previously, last year when I met you, I was in Shenzhen, but now in Europe. And it's a beautiful night, and I'm very good.
Oh, great. It's good. You seem so chirpy and happy. I love this, James. It's good. We obviously for you, we spoke on a previous leadership series summit, but what can you tell us about your role at Tencent Games on a more kind of daily basis? What do you tend to do?
Okay. Usually I introduce like, hello, PUBG Mobile fans in the world. I'm James Yang, charged for Esports Center of IG Global Tencent Games. So I'm working with all the team members in esports team and regional team to make our product to be seen more to the people, and also making this esports tournament more excited. We're working every minute, every day, and also even today now some tournaments, pro league tournaments are ongoing. So I think it should go well. But yes, and I'm very excited to have this chance to talk about mobile esports in esports award, because I started working for mobile esports since 2018. At that time, actually, it was hard to find people who really believe in mobile esports. Even so many people thought it would be a big potential, but not many really believe the power of mobile esports. But now I think quite many would believe it. So I'm very happy.
Oh, definitely. It's come. We mentioned the last panel as well. Like it's come on leaps and bounds. Like it's on another level. Like it's just become such a huge part of the competitive gaming world, mobile esports. And we'll get stuck into that very, very soon. We have one more panel guest though to introduce you to. You know him all as Mobile Matt. We are joined again by Matt Rutledge, my man. Matt, it's good to have you back here, buddy. How are you? How's life? How's things?
I am good. Life is great. Things are busy. Wow, what a time to be in mobile esports, I tell you what. But it's a pleasure to be back here. Always love doing these, and take any chance to cross paths with you, Adam. Here we go.
Yeah, you too. I mean, for those who haven't met you before or seen what you get up to on a regular basis, Matt, what would tell us about your kind of like your work and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I'll go back to the beginning of the mobile esports industry in the West. I was actually the first person to contract a professional Clash Royale team back when that game launched, and worked through community initiatives, ran the first recurring live event series in the United States for a mobile esports title. Had the pleasure of working with Complexity Gaming as director of mobile and their entry into Clash Royale League and mobile gaming. And then also worked for quite a while with Aftershock Media Group, which is the largest mobile gaming talent management agency in the West, and been able to really design and execute some of the largest influencer activations in mobile, in addition to doing things like creator programs, community events, and brand deals as well for content creators. So really, really excited to see where mobile has come in such a short amount of time, and really excited also for the future. I know we have some great talking points here planned for this panel.
Yeah, we do. And you made a great choice early on. You know, the alias mobile Matt, it came up trumps. I mean, here we are, and it's like perfect. You know,
I recognized really early that there's
did.
something huge in store for mobile, and you know what? I want to be right at the forefront of it. So I just went all in.
You were there at the genesis of mobile esports. I love it. I love it, Matt. It's great to have you guys here. We've got such a good panel here, such a fun panel as well, chaps. Let's get stuck into this. And obviously for you guys as well, as with panel one, if there's any questions you want to try and get into our panel here, do make sure to put it in the chat. You have Leo, James, and Matt here ready and waiting to try and answer your questions. So do get those in. We'll try and read those out for you. So I've got a few questions here, fellas, that we'll kick off with. One of the major questions, I guess, is how does mobile esports differ from PC esports? We talked about, kind of in the last panel about some of those differences, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Leo, I'll come to you first. How do the two differ, obviously hardware-wise, but what is other differences do you think as well?
That's a very good question. Look, I think we all know very well about the stigma, at least on this side of the world, that mobile gaming has. And I think it's such a silly one, right? It's like, saying pit bulls are aggressive to humans. They're not. We make them, right? So thinking that mobile games are less competitive, I think it's such a silly thought, because they're not. They are, because people made them. So when we think about mobile games in general, we're not thinking about mobile games. We're thinking about a game that happens to be on mobile. It's just different hardware, right? Of course, the platform will inform the game and how competitive it is. But at the end of the day, it's just a different piece of hardware that you're inputting with, a touch screen instead of a keyboard and mouse or a controller. So when we think about mobile games and Wild Rift specifically, we are building the game we believe in, and the game we believe in is incredibly competitive. So I think in many, many ways, mobile esports are not that different from PC esports, right? We're all aiming for the same thing. So some baseline assumptions are they both need to be fair, right? That's the baseline. Competition need to be fair. You need a healthy ecosystem for publishers, tournament organizers, teams, healthy career for professional players. You need to create opportunities for partners to be integrated into the sport. All that is true. When it comes to the product itself, at the end of the day, we all have big shows, right? What really drives everything we do is, of course, the audience and their motivations. And I think a lot of those key motivations are the same. People watch esports to educate themselves and learn to play the game better. They watch to entertain themselves. They watch because it's a social activity, something they do with their friends. I think the more specific, nuanced differences in my mind are, of course, the market landscape, right? We talked about the difference between mobile predominant markets like China, Southeast Asia, South America now riding a very interesting wave, and non-mobile predominant markets. How the audience behaves and consumes esports is also quite different and very interesting. So we talk a lot here at Riot about how a big chunk of the audience, they only own a mobile phone. That's their primary device or their only device. So they're not only playing the game on their mobile phones, but they're watching the sport on their mobile phones. And even if you look at League of Legends esports or Valorant esports, they are built to be watched on a big TV, right? On a PC monitor. When you try to watch that on a small screen, it's not that great. So building an experience that is good to watch on mobile is probably, I think, a big difference in my mind. And I think just the audience overall, right? They are younger, more diverse. We talk also a lot about how on PC the audience is usually 10% female, 90% male. In mobile, we got almost an even gender split with 40% female. So I think that's a big difference. But anyway, I think all those fundamental pieces are very similar.
Yeah, and I think that such great points. I think it was interesting actually, because the last panel we said the same thing. We were like saying, why do we even call them mobile esports? They're just esports. Like it just happens to be on a different device. It's really interesting because there is that kind of that stereotype, I guess, in some ways that it is different, but it's really not. It really isn't. I heard you, nodding along there and agreeing with a lot of the points there, James. I mean, I'd love to ask you the same question. Also, mobile esports. I mean, can they learn anything from established esports as well? Is there anything they can take from? Or we've already established esports. What are the things that mobile could do as well, or do you think they're doing enough?
Actually, we really learned almost everything from Riot and League of Legends, Dota 2, CSGO, especially Riot. So, because we started late, and most of the people who working even now for mobile esports, most of people have already esports experience we say the traditional esports. So that yes, we have been learning, and I think we are still learning. Even last year, Riot made really great the World Championship with the beautiful the virtual studio and others. It was fantastic, and we are continue to run. But you just mentioned there's a difference between PC esports and mobile esports, and Leo just mentioned there are quite many common things between mobile esports and PC esports, and I absolutely agree. It's just a device different, because last year in the Malaysia I mentioned you will not call tennis as a bigger sport and table tennis as a smaller sport. Even rackets are different and area different, but they are both great sports, right? So I don't think we really need to differentiate the PC esports and mobile esports, but because mobile has still the unique difference from PC as a mobility, accessibility, and lifestyle. So that one thing only mobile can do is, for example, in Southeast Asia, mobile penetration is bigger than 100%. That means everybody has more than one device. Maybe many people actually have two or even more. And I don't think PC can achieve this kind of big audience or big player size, even though there are still quite many people playing PC. But at home you have maybe one or two PC, but you may not have 5 to 6 PCs unless you are really maniac, maybe not or whatever. Because of this wider amount of the potential players, so that I think mobile esports should have a very wider pyramid in esports ecosystem. So that means there will be a lot of people playing as amateur, and then semi-pro and pro. Because I think PC, it's maybe a little more narrow, but mobile-wise, it should be wider. Because last year in PUBG Mobile, we had more than 600,000 people registered as a player for PMCO. And maybe it's getting even bigger from 170 countries. And this kind of big registration as an amateur to want to become semi-pro to pro, it will not be easy for PC, but because mobile has a much wider audience. And then maybe if you do not have a good PC, you may not even try to register as a pro player. But for mobile, any mobile, you play and you watch at the same time. So you have a much easier to become a player if you just have the one device mobile. So that I think ecosystem-wise, we have much wider amateur. And also we need to give the very clear ladder from amateur to semi-pro to pro. If we just focus on pro, then amateur may not have a dream to become hero from no one. So that this ecosystem is very important. And also they mentioned the ecosystem's importance. So that, yeah, I totally agree. And very interesting thing is more than 80% of our audience is watching esports on mobile. So that means when you make a graphic package, you need to consider they will see in very small size of screen, so that all the numbers or text need to be big enough. Otherwise, if you make the same graphic package like a PC, you cannot read it. Yeah. Maybe this is just some small part of it, but still there's some difference, but quite many common.
Yeah, it's so interesting and it's so true, because I think even I sometimes have a TV in the background, but I'm still watching something on my phone because I'm just so used to it's weird. I don't know why I do that. It's crazy. I mean, great points made there about the ecosystem and such as well. I think it's a really interesting analogy with the kind of pyramids being kind of like steeper and kind of wider with the and I think that it's spot on as well. I mean, Matt, you've been in amongst the esport the mobile world kind of since day dot, really, since its origin. Like, have you seen, I mean, what are some of the unique challenges that you've seen in the mobile space, and what have you taken from the guys there, and would you agree that mobile esports can differentiate itself from PC thanks to X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, without a doubt. So one of the biggest strengths of mobile as a platform is accessibility, right? Which is why mobile is able to have such a large player base, why esports is able to be accessed by so many people, and why we have that type of pyramid structure more so than PC or console-based esports would. But with that also comes unique challenges, right? So if you do understand that your player base is somewhat a little bit more casual than maybe a super narrow esports scene might be, right? That means you also need to take some reasonable steps to cater to that audience to really engage them. So if you are doing an esports broadcast to try to make it entertaining for casual players, maybe you want to cut out downtime, right? Maybe the analyst desk segments are going to cause casual people to tune out or something like that, right? And so we have games like Brawl Stars that have done a phenomenal job by producing these super fast-paced esports broadcasts that just have constant action, right? And with that also comes challenges like the graphics packages that James just talked about. I know that's something that PUBG Mobile and Wild Rift have done a phenomenal job of. And I would actually make the argument that PC and console-based esports are learning from mobile in a lot of ways as well, with that being a huge part of it. Because even with League of Legends on PC, there's a large percentage of people that are watching on mobile devices.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing, isn't it, how much content you consume on a small screen, and there we are saying, "Oh, it's different to regular." No, it's not. It's the same. It really is. Well, I mean, I've got loads of questions coming through here on the chat as well, chaps. So I'll kind of read out a couple of them now, if that's okay with you. Lawrence Brenner has come in. I'll come to you, Leo. He says, "Do you think we'll see some competition of the same game on both mobile and desktop platforms in events?"
Oh, that's an interesting question. So look, I think we talk so much about Wild Rift being a mobile game that I think a lot of us forgot sometimes that it's also going to be available on console, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's still a discussion to be had by the game team whether or not crossplay will be available and when console will be launched. But I think it's going to be a challenge for us in esports, because what do we do then, right? Do we have separate competitions for mobile and console? Do we merge them? And I think each direction will have interesting implications. I'm not a fan of the idea of having a Wild Rift mobile world champion and a Wild Rift console world champion, right? I like the idea of who's the best Wild Rift team in the world. So the idea of having mobile and console together is an interesting one. As far as desktop goes, I really don't know. I mean, we are not in a position at Riot to have that type of challenge. Maybe with Valorant Mobile coming into play, if there is crossplay there, that might be interesting. On the League of Legends space, that's just not a reality right now. We think the PC community is very well served by League of Legends on PC. But again, for new titles, I think that could be a possibility. There's a big conversation to be had on competitive integrity, right? We had our initial exploration. We were building Wild Rift Esports with players thinking about, do you prefer to play on a touchscreen or on a console controller? What we learned from players, well, at least the ones we talked to, is that they can accomplish more using a touchscreen, right? Because you're not only using, your thumbs, you can use your fingers to travel through the mini map. You can just do more. And we see people doing, incredible stuff like using 6 fingers to play, which is crazy. Is that a competitive advantage over someone playing on a keyboard? I don't know, right? One could argue that the simple fact of offering everyone the same options is offering a fair playground, but I don't know. I think that's a great question. And again, I think it will probably vary from game to game.
What do you think about with regards to PUBG, James? Is that something that could happen, or I mean, you chuckling? I think probably not. But
yes.
What do you think?
I just what Leo mentioned about the touching. Actually, it reminded me when I saw that some pro player playing the game in PUBG Mobile to control the recoil. How they play is they using the gyro sensor, like playing like this shooting. So it's really like
really okay.
Yeah, so they playing like this. But gun shooting is just like a Razer. So, but anyway, yeah. So, frankly, I think PC, maybe console and mobile, it can be played maybe in the same, but the PC and mobile may not be able to play together because it's like baseball. If you bring the kind of some wood bat and if you bring the iron bat with much bigger size, it will be different. How to hit, it will be totally different. So that actually we do not allow the players to using the Bluetooth keyboard and mouse to play PUBG Mobile. It's playable when you just play normally, but in the professional or at least in the fair play esports side, it's not allowed. Even we do not allow to use the tablet or like some iPad to play, because iPad, the screen ratio is different from mobile. So if you play in the iPad, actually you can see little wider range of the area, so that it can make unfairness. So in esports, I believe fairness will be one of the most important things we need to keep, so that even internally we consider whether we need to allow some glove, or whether you need to allow the devices attached to the kind of mobile. So so I think considering the fairness, PC and mobile playing together, I doubt.
Okay. Great insight. It's really interesting. Hope that's answered your question there from Lawrence Brenner. Ben Garvey's got in touch as well. I'll come to you, Matt. He's just adding on to the conversation about like how you can kind of, I guess, digest more about who's watching where and such. What is mobile esport viewership like? I've noticed, he says he's noticed only about 20% of his viewers watch from mobile. Is it higher for mobile based? He's like, I don't know how you would even consider kind of measuring that. Can you measure the fact that are there more people watching mobile esports via mobile? I mean, I would say that a lot of people just watch competitive gaming regardless of whether it's mobile or not on handsets anyway. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, without a doubt. And this is, one of those topics that's a bit difficult to answer without knowing what game and what region and stuff like that. Because the reality is that there's so much variance depending on where you live in the world, where your viewers are from, and what game or genre you're in. But without a doubt, there are so many regions where mobile esports is completely taking over that are mobile first regions. And Brazil is a great example of that, where there's incredible smartphone penetration. And James mentioned even Southeast Asia, you have over 100% mobile penetration, right? And so in those kind of circumstances, if you have a mobile viewership that is playing a mobile game, well, chances are they might also be watching your esport on mobile. But from that perspective, as far as content consumption habits and behaviors are concerned, one thing that's also unique with mobile is short form content. And that's something that we've seen a huge boost in even this year. Obviously TikTok has been a global phenomenon for a long time, but now we're also seeing YouTube Shorts really pop up. We're starting to see Instagram and Reels really be a focus. So there's a lot of things to be said about what esports short form content strategy should look like, especially when dealing with a mobile viewership. So certainly one thing that is unique as well to mobile esports fans is that they live on mobile social platforms, right? So they're already on Instagram looking for content. They're already on TikTok looking for content about games that they enjoy. So certainly one thing, especially as we start talking about ways to kind of extend just beyond the competitions into something that's, cultural relevance and how do you tap into people in their lifestyles and make this part of their lives. Content is a great way to do that.
Yeah. And it's a great go on.
Sorry, if I may add something just to plus one what Matt just said. On League of Legends PC, we have a global average of 40% of viewership coming from mobile. On League of Legends PC. In China, that number goes up to close to 60%. And that's LoL Esports PC. We expect Wild Rift Esports viewership to be even higher.
That's exceptional. 60%. Wow. I mean, it's great that we're actually talking about the audience as well, because one of the questions that we have is what is the audience of mobile esports typically like? I guess this varies from game to game, but are there any particular preferences, behaviors, and watching habits? So I'll come to you, Leo, of people watching mobile esports that are different from traditional esports at all?
Yeah, so we are still getting started, right? Wild Rift is a baby, both the game and the sport, so we don't yet have a ton of data. But what I can say is, and also corroborating with what Matt just said, we have to understand the audience lifestyle, right? And how your product, experience, your show will fit in their lifestyle. So if you think about Wild Rift, part of the reason that make the game interesting is the mobility, right? You play if you're on the go, commuting to work or school, on a bus, if you're waiting on a line, if you have 15 minutes, you can play a match. So when we think about the shows and the content we produce for the sport, we want to do the same thing. If you look at the LPL, League of Legends Esports in China, we broadcast 6 days of the week at the Chinese prime time, and the shows are long. They're like 4 or 5 hours long. When it comes to Wild Rift, we want to, as we do with the game, we want to try to have those shows on strategic moments throughout your day that just makes it easier for you to watch. So maybe instead of, having a show that is 4 hours long in the prime time, maybe we're going to do a 1 hour long show in your lunchtime, and you're eating lunch and you're watching Wild Rift Esports, right? So understanding their lifestyle and the fact that they like short form content and try to, again, insert those in strategic moments throughout their day, I think it's going to be pretty key to make it successful. Because again, if people don't have an hour to sit in front of their PC and play a game of League of Legends, we cannot expect them to have hours to sit down in front of a TV and watch esports, right?
Yeah, exactly. How about you, James? What are your thoughts on preferences, behaviors, and watching habits?
So as mentioned, for our side, more than 80% of audiences are watching mobile, but also that's different by East and West. In East, more ratio of people on mobile, and West actually, as you mentioned, the 20 or 30 people actually watching on PC. So it's different by East and West. But the interesting thing is, once you watch mobile, you may feel you may not be able to watch this mobile for a long time continuously, because you may get a call, or you may need to send message, or you want to share how game going on. So that in traditional esports, the average watch minute, the average minute by view will be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or at least it's longer. But for mobile esports, average watch minute is much shorter. Once every time when you watch, then it may not go longer than 10 minutes, but you come back. So that more frequently you're coming back to watch, but you do not maybe watch forever for 4 hours show. You come and watch and go, or sending message, or eating something, or laying down and coming back. So that their behavior is really lifestyle, and the accessibility is different. They are much more casual. They do not watch for a long time, but they come back and watch, and they easily spread what they see into friends and others, so that the community and the viral is super important to increase viewership.
Yeah. And Matt, I'd love your thoughts as well. Like on the, are there specific genres of game as well, like or genres of games that you think that these habits are different in as well? Do you agree with the points of Leo and James? What are your thoughts as well?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with everything Leo and James have said on this panel. Like, this is amazing to have such strong advocates for mobile, and nobody better in the world than these guys. So I'll say one thing is that I think that in mobile esports in particular, I think that there's going to be a much stronger weight on the success of the esport on player brands versus what you see in PC and console, because I really believe that there needs to be a personal aspect that really draws the viewers in to the players, the storylines and things, right? Because especially when you start talking about, hey, how do we increase that watch time, or how do we increase the engagement? It's the things that are like bigger than the game itself that can help make that happen. And so being able to have huge stars in your game, like a Paraboy, right, is just going to do wonders for retention. And the more that can happen, the better. And it's difficult to build that from scratch, obviously, but certainly something that can be done, especially through like shoulder content and stuff like that. So the other thing I want to point out is that I think one thing that's particularly unique to mobile is that the players are starting to become accustomed to and expect a much faster content cycle than PC and console players are. And I think that's driven by free-to-play and microtransactions. You really need to have a steady stream of game modes and things that are being released. And that's especially been successful for a lot of Eastern publishers that have a much faster content cycle than Western ones, frankly, do. And so that is something that I think is also becoming a behavior of mobile esports fans, is that they expect a lot more new stuff, and so certainly things to keep them engaged even between the largest esports events is a big thing as well.
Yeah, on the subject of microtransactions you mentioned there as well, Matt, I think an interesting question as well is how can you generate other revenue opportunities in mobile esports? Do you have any ideas on that at all? Do you think there's other ways you can do that? How can you find other ways to create revenue?
Yeah, without a doubt. So obviously the way that you generate revenue depends on where you are in the ecosystem. But if you are wanting to find sustainability in esports, you almost have to find ways to do it that are independent of competition, right? Because if you're an organization that's fielding a team in a league and you're just betting on your team winning the championship, you may be really out of luck, right, if you don't do that. So you need to find things to help drive new revenue streams. And that's often done, obviously, with content, with merchandise, with building a fan base that's engaged that you can tap into in other ways, right? If you're a player, right, trying to generate revenue, you can't, you can just be the best in the world player and stuff. But if you rely on consistent competitive performance only, then you're not really diversifying and finding security there. So finding ways to, again, build your personal brand, maybe start a YouTube channel or post lifestyle stuff on Instagram, TikTok, are ways you can kind of diversify. And then if you are a publisher or a league operator, right, you want to really create these like critical mass moments with the biggest championship events and regional championships and all of this stuff, right? But then you also want to look at the long tail, right? So what are you doing in between those events? How are you engaging the player base, the viewer base in between those moments to really create these hardcore fans? Because you can't just rely on single esports broadcasts, right? In order to find sustainability and grow your scene, you need to also kind of engage people in ways that are beyond that. And that's often done with even things like tapping into cultural relevance, celebrities, music artists, and stuff like that.
What are your thoughts as well, James? Would you agree with Matt there that those are some great ways to create new revenue streams?
Sure. And more revenue always better, but it's not for us to make a profit. Actually, while doing esports for publisher, it's really extremely difficult to make even break even. It's really hard to make a profit. So, but still we want to make more revenue, not because we want to make a profit, but because we want to share more with the players and pro-ops. Actually, quite many pro-ops, most of the pro-ops, they cannot make a profit. They still invest, but even though we increase the prize pool, this year, PUBG Mobile, our total prize pool is $50 million. But this prize pool is mainly to players in the team. So the pro-ops, they may not be able to get much. So that we actually want more revenue to share, to support more pro-ops, to invest back to their players. So that I believe to make more revenue in-game item or in-game revenue, I can call this as a B2C revenue by esports, will be very important. And I think there'll be big enough potential to make much more revenue, because when you just started the esports, actually, they are not famous teams or players, so that people or our players do not want to pay money to buy something for them. But I buy shoes because of Michael Jordan. Once you have the star in your ecosystem, then that's the time for you to maybe make a way to make a B2C revenue. So that this year, we finally started, making a plan to make esports in-game revenue, so that we are using the player card. So that all players joining to the PMGC, we're gonna announce this later, but we'll make some kind of way for players to own the player card by paying to get some, and this revenue will be shared with the players later. So that we wanna make revenue, and B2C revenue will be very interesting and important. On top of it, also, I'm very interested in NFT. And NFT will maybe bring the quite big revenue to pros and players.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, really interesting. We're almost out of time here, chaps. We've only got like a few minutes left. So one question I'm quite interested to ask all of you. It's a very generic question, but I think one that I'm just interested for answers, really. What do you guys think are the next big hit mobile esports titles? Leo, I'll start with you. What do you think is going to be one of the big ones to look out for? Do you think can really explode on the mobile scene?
You cannot ask that question to me. I mean, I'm biased.
That's fine. I'm
totally biased.
You're not wrong though.
Look, we're so excited with mobile in general, right? I think Riot as a company, we're now looking at mobile very seriously, right? If there's one thing I love about this company, is the vision and passion for gamers. We define ourselves more on who we serve and not so much about what we do. We serve gamers. Gamers are clearly going to mobile, embracing mobile around the world. So Wild Rift is, of course, a big bet. But if you look at everything we did in the past couple of years, Valorant is going to mobile. TFT is on mobile. We have a special version in China, Fight for the Spatula, that is doing extremely well. Legends of Runeterra launched on mobile, right? We as a company, we're embracing mobile so much. And again, I'm biased because my world is Wild Rift. I work with League of Legends Wild Rift every day. And we're super excited, super confident. I do think it's going to be a big hit, right? We are putting all of our energy to making it that the case, right? All of Riot's force on production, creative, publishing events on Wild Rift. Again, we're not just copy pasting League of Legends, right? The game is unique, the audience is unique, and we're really taking our time to build things and build a strong foundation. There's no cutting corners to building esports, right? You can buy your way in. I think some people try to do that and they're usually not successful, right? Buying your way in by giving a lot of money to teams in the form of subsidies or just having huge prize pools. That's just not sustainable. It's going to take time, but again, I'm very confident we're going to get there, and we're working very hard to make that a reality.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Matt, you and I were chatting earlier on this year. We were texting back and forth. You were like, yeah, Wild Rift is going to explode. This is going to be the big one.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Can I throw a curveball real quickly, though? Because I actually want to pick
it.
up on what James said about NFTs. I think one game that's really under the radar that people are underestimating is Axie Infinity. And it may be a game that you've never heard of, and that's okay because that's true for a lot of people. But they just did $800 million in revenue last month. And are closing in on almost 2 million daily active users. And it's a game that has nearly identical day 30 and day 90 retention, which is unheard of. And that's because it is a blockchain game that's based on NFTs. And it's also actually why I am soon moving into NFTs as a category with some really what I think are big moves. So really, really excited for the future of NFTs. And I think that's going to have a huge natural overlap with mobile in particular.
Very interesting. That's
amazing.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah. I'm equally really interested in the NFT space and kind of like seeing what happens there, because it's a really exciting time, isn't it? Who knows what can happen, but it's really, really promising. And James, I'll come to you. I mean, any other mobile esports titles that you think are worth looking out for, that you think are going to be big ones?
To make a successful esports, the most important thing is the traffic. I mean, the base players. If you don't watch, unless if you don't play it, maybe more and more people actually watch, even you stop playing, but at least you have played, then you may want to watch. So that if you do not have enough base user pool, you cannot make enough kind of successful mobile esports. So that actually that question is actually same like what kind of game will be successful or next big title in mobile gaming. And I don't know, but I think that can come from Riot or Tencent.
Okay. and we'll subtly end it there as well. I think it's honestly, chaps, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for hanging out and talking, because it's such an interesting conversation as well. We've been talking about mobile gaming tons recently, and it's great to actually talk to some of the kind of like the biggest leaders in the space as well right now, which is really exciting. So thank you guys for being so brilliant, and thank you for all of your questions as well. Those of you who've been watching at home, it's been real fun to do that, and really appreciate you taking part in the show as well. That about wraps things up. Thank you so much for joining us here on the main panels from the leadership series. However, before we head over to the Zoom link for networking, I do want to say a big thank you to our keynote speakers. Mike Ashford, we saw earlier on, who was the real one that was on point. It wasn't me, it was you, buddy. Thank you for the Esports Awards CEO there. And of course, all of our amazing speakers today. A big shout out to Tim Sipp, to Kirsty Endfield, to Khang Tai, to Matt Rutledge, James Yang, and Leo Faria as well. We have our next Esports Leadership Summit coming up in October, 1 month before the big one, before November 20th. So it's huge. Be sure to look out for our emails and join the Esports Leadership Series LinkedIn group, which has tons of interesting bits posted in the comments as well, like reminders of what's going on and coming up in the calendar as well. Thanks again for joining, and make sure to join us in some networking breakout rooms now. Those are happening right this second with the speakers and other industry professionals as well. This session is open to absolutely everybody, so you are very much welcome, and they prove extremely valuable in making connections within the esports space. So we definitely encourage you to join. The link will be posted in the comments now. I've been Adam Savage. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening to this World of Esports Gaming Leadership Series from September. It's been real fun to be here, and hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to seeing you in October for the next one. Till now, go to the breakout rooms, enjoy yourselves, and I'll see you soon.